Hey guys, thanks for watching. All right, real quick thing with Dr. Rob Neal, who is a biomechanic person and also went through all this wedge stuff. So, kind of an issue that I've seen, what I do, Dr. Rob, is like I interview all these different instructors and different ways about how to get better at golf. And I've seen kind of like a singularity where different coaches talk about all different types of things to get, theories and, they have their own personal style. But I'm noticing that when the rubber meets the road and they really want the person in front of them to improve, I'm noticing I could name off 20 different instructors that are all prescribing this one drill that I think, not really drill, but this one thing to do that really connects, I think, with the full swing stuff that you did and the wedge craft stuff that you did. And what that is so they talk about all this different stuff, but when they actually want them to improve, they're prescribing all their players to get really good at basically like a rib to rib or a waist to waist kind of shot.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost like imagine that different. So some coaches will say, take your pitching wedge and only hit it like 60-yard carry. And a lot of coaches like Bobby Clampett will say that the 50-yard pitch is the most important shot in the game. And other people talk about the functional swing plane and how you should really practice only on that plane. And other coaches will say it's by percentage. But they're all kind of getting down to this very simple motion there. And so I was wondering, like, what do you think might be the reason for that? And then what is the disconnect that people have where, they might be making a good motion there, but then when they start to bend the right elbow and do other things, take it maybe on this higher plane, they just can't do it. Like, what's so good about that, or have you even seen that?
So I would typically use those types of swings when building, a golf swing. So, because in that phase of the motion, then there's really not too many things that you can do differently but still be effective.
Okay.
So, and I would call that part of what I would do in teaching lag, shaft lean, and impact. Kind of impact alignments might be another word that people use there as well. So the entire notion of doing those small swings, and typically at lower speeds, is to build the pattern of movement in that part of the swing. And this would be consistent with what you would see in the motor control literature as well, where you would learn different parts of a movement and then assemble them together afterwards. And so I would say the reason people don't necessarily get better doing this and then going back to their full swing is that they need the other parts of the movement to be rehearsed and practiced so that then they can stitch it together. So imagine you're putting together a series of video clips, and you work on, let's say, P1 to P2, so taking the club away. What are all the requirements there? And then you go, all right, well, we need to get to the top of the backswing here. So let's practice from P2 to the top of the backswing. So this is another phase of the swing. And then we'll practice transition. And then these 9 to 3 swings, or whatever you want to call them, functional swing plane movements. Where do you need to be at impact? Where is the destination of the body and the club post-impact? Where are you trying to get to after impact? Because in so many ways, the brain responds better to that than saying, all right, I just need to hit the ball. Actually, I need a destination that goes beyond hitting the ball. And so if you don't teach people all of those pieces, it's not very easy for them to stitch it all together. And so just picking out one thing, which is very important because, as I said earlier, there's not much that you can do differently in that phase of the swing and be effective. Like, you can hit the odd good shot if you're not rotated well enough, or you don't lean the shaft forward enough, or
the odd good full swing shot, you mean?
Yeah, the odd good full swing shot. Yeah. I mean, but to be consistently delivering the club, with high speed and good attack angle, good path, all of those things, then you need to do fundamentally the correct movements through P6 through to P8. I'm assuming you're familiar with that terminology. So,
sure.
Some people call it delivery to mid follow through.
Yeah, basically belt to belt.
Yeah. So when the club's first parallel on the downswing, through to when it's parallel with the ground again on the follow through side. That I think Mac O'Grady was the guy who came up with that P nomenclature. So I'll give him credit for that. But it's just a position during the entire movement, although they are just positions. So,
so you think that like with just those small like functional swing plane swings, there's like if you had like 150 really good players do those swings, they would look a lot more similar than if you had 150 players do their full swing.
Yeah.
So it could be the solutions to making a good clipped shot. So that would be like, a couple things you need would be forward shaft lean, shallow delivery, things like that, is going to be kind of narrow what you have to do. Your choices are much more narrow.
You can even go and look at full swings of tour players in that region. And look, there are some differences, but they tend to coalesce towards the typical pattern that you would see with good connection between arms and body, shaft lean, all of that sort of stuff. Lags still, present at P6. And so yeah, like you can just pick out those sections of tour player swings, and you'll notice a lot of similarities. You'll notice a lot more similarities than differences.
Now, do you think that there's something to when you're doing those shots and the way to effectively hit those shots? I wrote a quote down from you the other day. Where did I put it? Anyway, I'll just try to remember it. Yeah, I wrote a quote down from you the other day that you said to effectively shallow the club, the handle needs to be raising through impact. It was something like that. Can you just talk? And then I think that learning to do that in that short swing, effectively raise the handle through impact, which is a little bit, what do you call it when it's not an obvious solution? Counterintuitive. Yeah, it's a little counterintuitive that the handle would raise, but that handle raising. So talk about why the handle needs to raise, and then also does that also happen in like a full 7?
Yeah, I mean it happens. Like if you go and look at full swing mechanics, the handle will start raising by about the right thigh if you're looking at a face-on video. And if it hasn't started by then, it's going to be too late. Your delivery is going to be steep. So just imagine, first of all, that you have a single pendulum and the club shaft is the length of that pendulum, and it's got an axis up at your hands. If you just had a single pendulum like that.
If I was just like going like that.
Yep. Okay. So if you take that shaft up and you drop it, then the club head or the end portion of that pendulum is dropping, right? But
yeah, it's going down the whole time
until you get to the maximum. When the head is below the pivot.
Okay, gotcha.
And then it starts coming up. Okay, so if on the one hand, let's just do that again because it's a good visual, is as the head is descending on its arc, you pull up on the handle, that will flatten the curve that the club head is making. Do you follow that?
Yeah, so before the bottom, when I just have a single point, and this isn't moving here, the bottom is about like this.
It's a perfect arc with the length of the pendulum as the radius of that.
And then when I pull up on it, let's see. Yeah, and then the bottom gets a lot more like that. Okay, flatter, yeah.
And so that's the shallowing mechanism that you have available to you by getting the handle to move up earlier than impact.
And then when you have the bottom like that kind of flatter, 3D flat spot, some people say, or flatter like that, does that give you more chance of like making a mistake as far as, because if it was a total U like this, the points where you can have a good shot are kind of more
Yes.
narrow than if it's
Yeah,
a flatter.
that's
Okay.
true, particularly with finesse wedge shots. It's not so true with iron shots or
Okay.
driver because, like with a driver it is, yes, but with iron shots where, you're having a collision with the turf as well,
Hmm.
yes, there's some insurance provided by flattening the arc out at the bottom, but not a lot. The other main
So,
reason in full swing for getting the handle to raise is that you're pulling hard on the handle, and that's allowing the club head to release down. So that's a mechanism to get energy out to the club head.
awesome. So there's kind of a close connection with the mechanics of how a driver works and how a finesse wedge works, even though the forces are totally different.
Yep.
How so?
Well,
How
well,
would
I
you
mean,
explain that?
with a finesse wedge, you want that flat spot so that if you do land on the turf a little early, then
Uh-huh.
it'll be like a skier. It'll ski along the top of the turf, collide with the ball, and then you'll hit an effective shot. In fact, a lot of really good chip shots are hit that way with a slight fat, if you can call it that, slight collision with the turf just before the ball. Maybe it's 2 or 3 inches before the ball, and you still hit a very, very effective shot if you have
Okay.
a shallow down the bottom, not if you're steep though.
Hmm.
Now with a
Okay.
driver, the flat spot actually needs to be inclined upwards so you can get a positive angle of attack. So
Yeah.
raising the handle early and getting it to raise a lot, and that's not just by pulling on the handle with the driver, it's the extension with the knees and the ankles, and then extension through the hips that all contribute to lifting the handle up.
So with the finesse wedge, it's moving so slow that this is something I wanted to talk to you about anyway, but the left arm raising like this is enough to get that force
Yeah.
up. But with the driver, how, first of all, like with the driver, like, because I know you've done this math or seen it, how heavy is, for like 110-mile-an-hour club head, how heavy is that club head when it gets down near the bottom
it's
near the ball?
maximum.
How much is it pulling on you?
It's pulling back at its maximum. I think probably around 60 kilos. So
What is that in
that's
pounds?
like 140 pounds almost.
Really? Okay, so if it's pulling on you 140 pounds and you don't want to just like heal the crap out of it, then you're gonna have to use your arm, your back, your leg muscles, your ankles, your everything, your hips, everything to keep that from just keeping going on in infinity that
Yep.
way.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's really
Yeah,
interesting.
and
I
then
love that.
I mean the best analogy that I can give you is the hammer thrower. Right,
Okay.
there the forces are even larger on the implement, pulling you kind of out of the circle, and so
Right.
you end up having to lean your entire body back
Hmm.
to be able to control the trajectory of the handle of the implement, the hammer,
Hmm.
and ultimately where the head of that hammer goes as well.
Okay, I wanted to ask you, so that's really exactly what I was looking for because that kind of explains why coaches are liking that. It makes it more of a funnel, and your choices are a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
limited, and it gets you like, okay, and that is kind of like a little baby version of what you're going to have to do
Yep.
anyway in the full swing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like in religion they say sine qua non, so that this like you need this or else
Yeah.
nothing. So it's basically like if you're baking a cake and you have all the perfect ingredients, but you don't have flour, you just have like a pretty yucky mush. You don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I think maybe a big reason for
Yeah.
that. All right, something I want to ask
Other
you. Go ahead.
piece to that there is why people can often do that at slow speed is that they have sufficient strength to be able to pull back against the inertial forces of the system. So that's their arms and the club, and therefore control
Or is it like
handle.
sufficient explosiveness to like the handle is going there, and if your body is kind of maybe strong but slow, like you might not have that reactiveness in you to pull back on the
No,
right
not
time?
so much that. It's that the forces start to get large the
Oh,
faster
okay.
you go. So the inertia force is a function of the angular velocity, and therefore also then the linear speed of the center of mass of the club and your arms. So your arms are pulling away from your body as well. So it's
Oh, right. Yeah.
so it's not just the club that's pulling away. That's why if you look at all of the good ball strikers, they're big and strong in the upper back, because that's what you need to be able to do. Pull back against.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen. That's what we've seen this week with Tiger Woods. He's getting 180
Yeah.
plus miles an hour of club head speed. And if you look at him versus like 2000 Tiger, year 2000 Tiger, his back is
Oh,
now
yeah, massive.
massive, and his
Yep.
shoulders and arms, and he's really so I don't know how much you've been watching. I'm sure you have been, but how much you've been watching Tiger's kind of a recent play. Uh, how has that changed as far as like how he was more of like a ground up lower body, like he was famously snapped that left leg, that left knee straight. And then a lot of people are saying, okay, how is this damaged person now getting, even faster? Like, what do you think has changed?
I mean, it's a bit too much for me to speculate there, Brandon. I
Oh, of
don't
course,
really
yeah.
know. So I'd rather
Right.
say no, I don't know,
Sure.
than give you some BS
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Last thing I wanted to ask you, because I know you've studied so many golf swings from like you've strapped up so many players, like good ones and average players. I have this study that I was looking at by 2015 study by it looks like Wang, Yang, Ho, and Xiang. And this is like a Chinese study, I think. And they were saying determine an effective golf swing by swing speed and impact precision test. So what they did was they took 7 golfers, so small study, 7 golfers, and they set them all up with things like that you have, and then with 3D, and then also with force plates. And the thing that I'm just going to read their conclusion here and get your point of view on it. Their conclusion was the vertical peak ground reaction force on the left foot occurring before impact and the left latissimus dorsi contracting prior to the right pectoralis major represent a superior skill by allowing the club to strike the ball with a normal collision at faster speed. And then when I read into this, basically what they're saying was that the better golfers would definitely get the peak force into their left foot before impact. Yes. But then they were also saying, which I thought was interesting, and I don't know if this really bears out, but I thought it was interesting. They're saying that kind of the club goes back and the left lat activates first before the right pec. And they said in the worst golfers, that would sometimes be out of order where the right pec would go on the left. What have you seen as far as that? Especially when you're starting to try to separate the different levels of golf.
I did an EMG study way back in the 90s, but I don't remember the detail of the firing order of the muscles.
Okay.
But I mean, it's kind of obvious to me, at least anyway, that if you don't have the peak ground reaction forces occurring prior to impact, then you've left energy in the system that didn't get out to
right,
the
because it needs some time to go from the ground through your body to the head.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that would be the first thing, and then the sequencing. I mean, clearly the lead latissimus dorsi is very, very important in terms of extending the lead shoulder. So extension is the pulling down across your chest.
Okay.
Flexion is lifting it up.
Is that different than adduction or adduction? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's so this is more down and
it has to pull down and across.
Okay.
So the latissimus dorsi is involved in both of those movements, the abduction and the extension at the lead shoulder.
Okay.
The right pectoral muscles.
Yeah.
I think I'm somewhat surprised that they said that the timing between those two is so critical because I would,
Yeah, they're saying that the lat has to contract prior to the right
yeah,
pec.
because the right pec is going to be the major contributor to adduction of the trail shoulder. It's going to
Yeah.
pull it across your
This.
body. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would have thought that those things have to occur almost simultaneously, but maybe just
Oh,
because
okay.
you've got to get your hands down first before you start the AB
The
and
more
AD adduction
horizontal
at the
out.
trail and lead shoulders respectively, that you can delay when the right pec has its activation, or is at its peak activation perhaps.
What have you seen? Because I know golfers and studying people moving things is so messy, as I've heard from other people. Like, what have you seen as like the real big difference when you're starting to go from like pretty decent golfers, like single digit handicap, and then like professionals? Like, as far as how they move their body or the sequence in which they do things, because you can find professionals that do almost anything. But what have you seen, like, if
I
you were to
mean,
only measure a few things?
the biggest differentiators come down to, I would say that the best ball strikers are more open with their body at impact
Yeah.
than the lesser skilled, so they can keep better arm-body connection. And
Yeah, I've seen that before too, because a lot of people will talk about the right side of the body, like here, here, the hip, the even the right knee, as like in bad golfers at impact, it's back
yep,
here, and in good golfers, it's
yep.
up here.
So they're much more rotated and less tilted, allowing them to
Okay.
stay better connected. I mean, it's a bit like whenever you look at skill level, is that the biggest differentiators are consistency of movement then. So the variability that an amateur golfer shows versus a seasoned professional is just higher. So they make more errors, and therefore their dispersions are higher or larger. It's not like amateur golfers can't hit the ball as far as professionals, or they can't. Their good shots are equally as good as the professionals, but their bad shots are worse. So that's the biggest differentiator, and so.
And do you think as far as like controlling the club enough to hit it out of the center of the face with the correct like impact dynamics and getting that to happen more often, is that just like an entire system kind of thing rather than like trying to cut out any certain
thing? I mean, if you look at, for example, pistol shooting, they found like the very best shooters in the world were more consistent with the muzzle control than their international contemporaries. So this was one of the differentiating factors. But interestingly, as you moved closer and closer to the core of the body, so as you moved proximally, the variability of the very best experts was higher than the other internationals. So what they
this tip is staying more still, but their core is doing more adjustments and wiggling.
And
more.
so as you go along the arms, the variability increases. So that if you make an error at the shoulder, then it gets corrected at the elbow by the very best, so that the muzzle consistency stays as muzzle consistency stays really high. That's the important thing. It's a bit like golf in that way, right? The very best ball strikers deliver the club consistently well.
Yeah, that goes kind of along with like this stuff I've been reading about called differential learning, where you might have the same task, which would be like, say, like you foot spray on a club and you try to hit it in the center of the club, but then you swing the club like 5 different kinds of ways. Like you try to hit a big slice, but hit it right in the center. Hit a big hook, but hit it right in the center. Stand on,
Mm-hmm.
1 foot and on your toe. So like you're moving differently, but then your focus, your external focus is kind of the
Yeah.
same. And I think they've seen some powerful stuff with
Mm-hmm.
that, but not really conclusive. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this was great. That's all I wanted to ask you, mainly about that 50-yard kind of that shot, and I think you answered it perfectly. So I think that'll motivate everybody to get really good at that shot. One of the best ways is if you guys go to wedgecraft.com, they have a really cool series out now about full swing, like more fuller wedges. So yeah, fairway wedges. So before it was like 60 yards and in. Now this is going all the way out to like 110 or 120 or so.
Yeah, and
so
anything that you're doing in the distance wedge or fairway wedge mechanics is just like full swing. So if you get good at those shots, then you'll see improvements in your full swing mechanics as well.
And then, because a lot of people ask this, is the driver swing different, or is it really just that it's teed up and in a different ball location?
No, it's
what's
subtly
different about driver?
Well.
It is.
Subtly
it is.
different.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll wait for your driver video to come out. You got a lot of work for years and years. Okay. Thanks a lot, Doctor.
All right.
A lot, Doctor.
See you, Brendan. Cheers.
Okay. I'm gonna